and then I'm gonna introduce you, and then we'll go through your life, getting into comedy and all your entertaining and anything you do, and then anything you're gonna be doing, including the festival, and then end it with where to follow you.
Sounds great.
Okay. Hi, everybody, you lazy people at home. You don't fool me. You people that come on here dressed from here on up. I get it. You have no idea what I'm wearing either. So take that. I'm your girl, Linda Marcus Smith, the old lady that doesn't have a life. Nah, that's not true. I do this for you guys and gals out there because I have been to comedy clubs and I've seen you guys willy nilly go to a comedy show. You have no idea what's going to happen. You're like, I'm going to go to comedy. That's on the way in. On the way out, you're like, I'll never go to comedy ever again. All right. Stop it. Stop trying to like Google people when they're performing. You don't get to know them that way. This is your opportunity to kick back, dressed from the waist on down at home, and watch comedians being real. You know, you're going to get to see if you even like this guy here today. You know, what's he like when he's not trying to impress people? How does he answer the questions? You know, is he an axe murderer or a saint? You don't know. You're going to find that out. It's like just at the same time I do. So here we go. Are you ready, people? Let's give it up for our only guest this hour. Yeah, the guest of the hour. Yeah, yeah. I could do his intro, but you don't want me messing up an intro. I'm just going to say his name. Let's get to know him, you guys. The one and only comedian that I'm interviewing this hour, Justin Gonzalez.
Hey,
Woo!
hey.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, this is
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you so much for coming on. Now, I know you're on the East Coast, and I don't
Yes.
want to know your coordinates because, but would you mind telling me, like, what vicinity, what city, locale you live in right
Sure. So I'm originally from Philadelphia. So please don't switch off those of you that have beef with Philadelphia, okay? But I live in South Jersey now because well they don't really know who I am, so I can get in trouble now.
now? He lives in South Jersey. Jersey. So, South Jersey, is that really close to New York? Tell me about the map.
So, okay, so I'm about 20 minutes east of Philadelphia, about 2 hours south of New York City.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I got
Yeah,
it now.
yeah. The last 20 minutes of that commute is just waiting to get through the Lincoln Tunnel. But it's a yeah. So I'm not too far from the city, but it's again being from Philadelphia, I'm close enough to my cheesesteaks, but I can still get up to New York for a good slice.
I like that. Well, we want to get to know before we go into the comedy festival that you're in and your socials to promote you. I want to get in a DeLorean with the deflex flex capacitor, whatever that was. And I want to go back in time and we'll come back to the future in a minute. Right now, let's go back to little tiny Justin growing up at home. Paint us a picture. Were you a troublemaker? Were you compliant? Did you
uh,
hide in a closet? Who were you at home?
so I grew up in an interesting family. Now I say a lot. I think a lot of people think they grew up in an interesting family. Mine was really interesting. My father was the Puerto Rican Marine from Brooklyn. My mother was the Pennsylvania Dutch nurse from Philadelphia. And so, of course, that makes me confused.
Totally. You just
Goodness,
confused me.
I know. I was the only kid in third grade that knew how to salsa and polka. Boom, bop, bop, bop. It was rough, I'll tell you. Plus, I was also the middle child, so there's that. So I have an older sister, I have a younger sister, and then I was the monkey in the middle. And I'll tell you, they're beautiful, they're brilliant, and the terrible thing, they're both bronze. Me, I'm what you call Latino Blanco. I mean, my goodness, are you kidding? It's terrible. I'm whiter than the keys on the piano. And when you see me and my sisters together, it's terrible. We're like the most disappointing double stuffed Oreo cookie you've ever seen. I'll tell you, it's with me being in the middle. But
Wow.
it's but you know, being at home, my older sister, she was the popular one, and you know, she was the captain of the cheerleading squad. My younger sister, she was the athlete, and me, I was always the artist. I was always wondering, you know, like, well, I'm feeling a certain way. How am I going to express that? And so I always told stories. I've always loved making people laugh, but the beginning of my expression of that sort of stuff came through music. And my parents were both music lovers. I mean, outstanding music lovers. And so music was always in the household. I was hearing everything from Lawrence Welk to the great, you know, Hispanic music from my father. I was, you know, Celia Cruz and Willie Colon and Hector Lavoe, the great salsa music out of New York City. And then everything just kind of landed in the middle when I started to study music. And I just fell in love, and I had some wonderful teachers that said, "Hey, your voice sounds like it would fit into a certain genre." And so I started to expose myself, and they exposed me to this style of music, which was classical music. Now, you know, again, I was a poor Puerto Rican kid from Northeast Philadelphia. I had no idea that this was a world that I could be welcome to. And
And you're a,
then,
you're a tenor.
yes, yes. So that means I sing the high notes and I get the bigger checks. but but I had a weird freak of nature thing happen to me. My voice changed when I was 11 years old, and so I've pretty much sounded like this since I was 13 years old as a young man.
You mean your
And
voice never dropped?
no, it did. So I used to be like a little flute, but now this is it. So this is where my voice has sat the whole time. I've sounded like a man since I was 13 years old. And I was in my 13th year. I was offered an opportunity to be a featured soloist with a group that was touring to Europe. Now, again, I was this poor kid. I had no idea that this world was. I had no idea I had a seat at this table. I mean, let's be honest. I didn't know there was a table, you know. But here I am, you know, and I found myself 13 years old singing for 2 weeks through Germany and France. One of our first performances, I was a featured soloist in the Cathedral Notre Dame in Paris. And again, I'm 13 years old. And in that moment, in that trip, I mourned my childhood because I knew for the rest of my life that I had to entertain people and that I had to create things for people. And so that's kind of tough when you're 13. You know, you speculate, you think about, oh, what am I going to be when I grow up? I'm 13 years old. I knew that I was going to be on stage. And kind of fast forwarding through my teenage years, you know, I sang a lot with the Philadelphia Orchestra and their premier symphonic chorus. I was singing with Opera Philadelphia and a number of different opera groups up and down the East Coast. Continued to do touring throughout Europe. I did my first solo recital tour at 19 through Portugal. Had my Carnegie Hall debut when I was 16.
You're what?
Uh,
Carnegie
but
Hall?
yes, yeah, at
And you were
16.
how old?
I was 16.
Jeez.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah, what do you do when you peak at 16? Am I right? My gosh. So I've got an answer for that. You have your Madison Square Garden debut at 19. That's what you do. So yeah,
No way.
I know, I know. It is not wasted on me how incredibly fortunate I was. You know, I think back to people that I went to school with, and you know, they're in jail. They do drugs, they sell drugs, or they're not with us anymore. They're dead. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I got out of that. I got out of that life. I got out of that death sentence of that's all that you could be. There's a very small handful of us that got out of the neighborhood and did something for ourselves. Some of them are nurses now, doctors, lawyers. Me, I realized that I had to tell stories and express myself. So
I have a question for you.
yeah, please take it away.
So, people that love opera, do they recognize what you at Starbucks?
No, most well,
Who recognizes you? I want
so
to
it's fun.
know.
Well, that's part of the reason why I left Philadelphia, because I became kind of a familiar face. And still, even when I go back to Philadelphia, if I walk through South Philadelphia, the Italian areas of South Philadelphia, I still get stopped in the street. Like, oh my God, you're that singer. And I said, well, that depends. Do you like that singer? And if you do, then yes, I'm that singer. If you don't
That's
like
so
that
funny.
singer, I'm not that singer,
Who is somebody famous that you've sung alongside?
So I've had the opportunity to sing with some great folks. Being from Philadelphia, I was over the moon when I got to sing with Chubby Checker.
What?
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
That's now, I'm sorry, I have to go. That's ridiculous.
I was over the moon. Getting to be on stage and to perform the twist with Mr. Ernest Evans.
You
And he
got
was.
to do the twist with Chubby Checker?
I mean,
You
it was
have a
amazing.
you have a bigger checkered past than a taxi driver. That's ridiculous.
But Chubby Checker is definitely my big one. I've gotten to sing with some other folks. I've gotten to, I've sung with Lenny Kravitz, the great rock singer, and gotten to
He's
sing
part
with.
Jewish. I love him.
Yeah,
I love
he
part
is.
of him.
So actually, I got to sing when the Democratic National Convention was here in Philadelphia. I got to sing with him there, and got to meet a whole bunch of folks while I was there. Got to hang out with Jerry Springer for a little bit,
What?
and
What?
yeah. Oh yeah, he was a sweetheart too. He used to be the mayor of, I believe it was Cincinnati. So he gets invited to all these political events, and he was just sitting off in the corner at this. Microsoft had a kiosk there. He was just kind of hiding in the Microsoft kiosk, and I just went over. I said, I know you're trying to be a little low key, but is it okay if I sit down with you? He said, oh, we talked for 15 minutes, just like people. It was amazing, and that's what I love about people when you get to a certain level. Like they are just totally normal people. That's, well, yeah, hey, please, I'm all the way down. I'm down here where my pants aren't. You know, please. So when you're up here with that upper echelon of folks, and you just realize, oh my gosh, they're just normal folks. And Jerry was fantastic. So
Someday you'll
that's.
be at a level where you can put them down. Ah, sit down and shut up.
Fingers crossed. Your lips, please. My gosh, your lips to God's ears. But
That's speaking of good karma.
but one of the most ridiculous events I ever did. I was singing with the Philly Orchestra, and it was one of their big anniversaries. The Academy of Music in Philadelphia is the oldest opera house in the United States, and so every year they do a big birthday concert for it. And this was one of the big ones. It was like 170, something like that. And on the bill was the master of ceremonies was Tom Brokaw. Got to hang out with him backstage. Two fantastic opera singers, Ben Heppner and Angela Brown, just world-renowned opera singers. They were on the bill. Amazing actor, comedic actor, and Broadway actor, Mr. John Lithgow. He was
Get
there.
out of here.
And the big get for the night was a little known singer by the name of Rod Stewart.
What the? You're gonna make me say the F word? What the? What the? You pissed me off.
Again, it is not wasted on me how fortunate I have been in my life. I mean, so all of these amazing people that I've gotten to, story tell with and make music with. It's amazing. Again, I'm humbled every day by it, because again, I remember where I came from. It was a little street literally on the wrong side of the tracks in Philadelphia, right down the street from the Delaware River. And the fact that it really has changed and molded my life, being able to tell stories all the different ways that I do for people.
So, okay, let's transition. How in the hell, pardon me, hell does exist. I don't care what you people out there think. How in the hell do you go from, I don't know, Rod Stewart to comedy?
So I had been working with a friend who was who's now he's a Broadway star.
Oh, sure. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, please. He got the big break, but oh my gosh, this guy, he can sing, he can act, he can dance. He's a true triple threat. He can perform the balls off a pool table. This guy's amazing. His name's Stanley Martin, and we were brought in to do this cabaret that was happening in Philadelphia, and it was my first time being introduced to comedians, other than seeing them on TV. I had seen Brian Regan, I had seen, Matt Birbiglia, or Mike Birbiglia. I've seen, Norm Macdonald, Carlin, all these amazing people that kind of
name some women.
Oh my gosh, Lisa Lampanelli. I'll tell you, Lisa Lampanelli was, when I saw her first taped special, I lost my mind. And I'll tell you, she actually introduced me, her style of comedy introduced me to Rickles. I had no idea who Rickles was. I had no, okay, well, let me do the big tell here. Okay, so I'm 36 years old. I was born in 1987. So all of this is new to me, especially back then. So I mean, I had no idea who Rickles was. And then Lisa, seeing that there was that type of comedy where everyone was a target, but they were a target of her love, And
exactly.
So
exactly.
And that's what you say. You always razz the people. You always give it to the people that you love the most, and that's what I adored about her. And I was in the background of a.
I got to meet her.
Oh, did you? Oh my gosh!
I gave her a gift basket. So I do this thing when I meet celebrities. I let them know I'm going to be meeting them to give them a gift basket when they're performing. And then I go to Goodwill and I get a little tiny 1-inch gift basket out of ceramic or glass. And I put a little candy in it. And I go, here's your gift basket.
I love it. Oh, that's so good. You get their expectations up, and then there's the punchline. I love it.
There's your twist joke.
Oh, gotta love it. So I joined this kind of cabaret troupe that was being run by this person who was a comedian. They got out of it for a while. They were looking to get back into it, and she's become such a dear friend of mine. And that's Julia Scotti.
And, yes, I've met her.
Yeah,
I love her.
So this was before America's Got Talent. She was just kind of creating this opportunity. She called it the Julia Scotti Comedy Test Kitchen. And we were putting it up in a small room at a historic bar in Philadelphia that sadly doesn't exist anymore. But people could come. They paid $5, and you would see these comedians. They would be trying out new stuff. It was a safe room to try out the new joke.
What was the name of the bar? I lived in Philly.
Oh, it was the Dark Horse Pub down just off of South Street in the Head House district down there. But it was a great little spot. I think it's still there. It's just changed management and names 3 or 4 times since we were doing this.
I wish, I don't know if Julia is bi or not, but if she was, she'd be biscotti. And I like biscotti. Don't you?
Oh, God, you know what? She'd say, yeah, she's crumbling just like a biscotti. But she was the sweetest because, I was there as a part of the musical component, and I would, when they would have brainstorm sessions, because they would write sketches. So they would do kind of sketch comedy as well.
Do you know Paul Lyons?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
He let me be his roommate for 6 months.
Oh my goodness, such a small world.
Thank you.
He's
I created it. I was there when the earth cooled. What? You don't think so? You think I'm lying?
No, no, I do. You're far too young. But oh my gosh, but Julia was such a sweetheart. She took me aside after one day we were doing a writing session, and she just said, "You know, I know that you're this classical musician, but I don't know if anyone's ever told you
No
you're."
way.
She just goes, "You're allowed to be funny." She just says, "You're allowed." And that was such a mind-blowing moment for me, because in classical music you're kind of told it's very academic and you have to be very, buttoned up. But she was the first one to kind of say, go look at Victor Borga. you're
Yes,
you're
yes,
allowed.
yes.
Yeah, she's like, you're allowed to be great and greatly funny. And so that opened up the door for me for telling stories while performing music. And
Don't you love Victor Borga?
oh my gosh. I mean, so ahead of his time, I think, in so many ways, just because it was amazing, because it was the perfect mixture of smart comedy and slapstick and just that kind of lowest common denominator comedy that everyone's going to get.
And so classy.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And and to boot, he was such a brilliant musician. That's the thing I think a lot of people don't get, that in order to be that silly, you have to be that good. And
And
he
the
was,
audience, I love he
oh,
he was almost making fun of the stuffy audience.
oh my God, he totally was. He was. It's not even almost. And that's, I think, the beautiful thing is he gave them permission to laugh at themselves, which I think was such a brave and brilliant thing to do, especially for when he was coming up and doing what he was doing. Just
I
so
just would
brilliant.
I would love to, if you ever see an interview where he really opens up to talk about where did his funny come from,
Mhm.
he's got to have gone through some dark stuff to be that committed.
Oh, oh my gosh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's a lot of comedians. Some comedians know, and it's not everyone's road. But I think that uh, the the need to not just laugh yourself, but to get up on stage and be that vulnerable so that other people can laugh. I think that comes from a very strong place of having needed that yourself and not having gotten it.
Yes.
And I think that's, I know, I feel like part of that was with me. I joked about my family, but my father was really, really tough. He served in Vietnam, and he was a very tough guy. He was injured after Vietnam. When he came back to the States, he was injured, and he
How did
was
he get
disabled.
injured? I'm a veteran. How did he get injured?
Oh, well, first, thank you for your service. So my father he was working on a loading dock, and there was an accident with a forklift, and he was pinned against a bunch of the pallets, and that ruptured discs in his spine, and that it also sliced into his liver, that he had to have emergency surgery. And so it was a whole thing, and sadly he couldn't work anymore. And again, he was probably in his early 30s when that happened, and or late 20s. And so, being a young man, not being able to work any longer, having a kid at home, a wife that's, a nurse and doing all of that. And again, we're talking in Vietnam era, Marine, they didn't necessarily have the same tools that, veterans have now, as far as having the resources to process those feelings and all of that. And so my dad was a tough guy that that had a lot of emotion built up in him, and like a lot of Vietnam era veterans, he self medicated, and he had a monkey on his back for most of his life, and it wasn't until probably the last 5 years when he finally got clean, was able to actually have a healthy relationship with me, and that's when we found out that he had cancer, and he passed away. But I still have that amazing last 5 years with him to see, like, wow, my gosh. And he got to see see what I had been doing with my life as well. My father, he knew that I could sing, but his whole idea was, well, why don't you just make a tape, send it to Paul McCartney, and get famous already? That was his bumper sticker. I would hear it at least once a week. Well, you keep complaining that you got to go to this gig. Well, why don't you just make a tape, send it to Paul McCartney, and get famous already? I was like, well, it doesn't work that way. And so I invited my father. He asked if he could come see me play after we had rekindled our relationship. And I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to leave you a ticket. Come if you want. Don't come if you don't want. It's no skin off my nose. And I left a ticket for him at the Will Call box. I was performing at the Academy of Music with the Pennsylvania Ballet. And not singing, not dancing. Don't worry. I'm there with the Pennsylvania Ballet.
I
And,
don't see you as ballet. I'm sorry.
so I sing this whole performance with the ballet. And afterwards, I get back into my civilian clothes. I pack up my tuxedo and I'm walking out the stage door entrance. And there's my father. And he's wearing a blazer and a necktie. And he has a pen in one hand and a playbill in the other. He was waiting for my autograph.
Oh,
And he just has tears in his eyes. And I sign his playbill for him. And he just wraps me up in the biggest hug. And he just says, I had no idea. And that was like the beginning of our 5-year relationship. That's when I really got my father back. And and that was tough, and and my mother, she was a nurse. She worked all the time. And then when I was just about getting into high school, my mother, who had for a good portion of her life at that point had multiple sclerosis, she had a major setback with that. And over 4 years went from being a nurse who was, working the floors and all of that and really, kicking butt, really a rock star, caregiver. She was in a wheelchair herself. And and then I went from being a son who really needed his mother to then being her caregiver
that's
through,
what happened to me and my daughter, and she hasn't spoke to
mm,
me in 10 years.
oh my gosh. Well,
I get it.
it's tough. It's so difficult. And me,
Tell people about this. I don't think people understand.
yeah. Well, the difficult thing was, again, you go through, and here's the thing: is my mother didn't have, and it was all physical. It was all physical. So she went from, again, being able to work 60 hours a week, walking the floors of a hospital over 4 years now, not being able to walk, not being able to drive, being cut from her job because they were doing cutbacks, not because they were trying to get rid of a person who was going to need more help from the company as far as stuff for someone who is now handicapped. So accommodations. So my mother lost her career and the thing that was her passion in life, and other motor skill things. My mother loved to bake cakes, and she couldn't do that anymore. Her hands weren't able to do that. And so I wasn't just taking care of someone who was sick. I was taking care of someone who was very, very aware of what they were losing. And they were just there as a witness of themselves, as opposed to feeling like an active participant. And so that was really, really difficult. The thing that also made that difficult was the fact that I had a younger sister, and my mother was, I find out now, there's that thing about hindsight, it being incredibly clear. You see that my mother was an enabler, very, very much so. And so my sister, who had some bad habits, she created an opportunity for her to be comfortable in that, so long as my sister took care of my mother. And
That's exactly me and my daughter.
yeah, yeah, it was so tough. And then my mother then really just also taking care of my younger sister, who was making poor choices, and my mother was again enabling those poor choices to happen. And as I was trying to work and try to make my mother's experience not just one of more days, it's not about quantity of life, it's about quality of life. So just trying to create, a quality of life, and my mother not wanting to have a good quality of life, she just wanted comforts, and so because of that, she wasn't saving money. She was making such poor choices that I needed to extract myself from the situation, because I knew that if I kept myself there, that one day my mother was going to be gone, and then I would have nothing for myself. I would have no foundation. I would have nowhere to go. And so I said, I have to make this difficult choice. I had to snip those apron strings, and that's when I kind of went out into the world, and I started to hustle more as a performer. And I did everything that I could to again still have that sort of relationship with my mother. And at the end of her life, before she passed away, I became an ordained reverend, and I actually performed her final blessing for her. So I sat, at her bedside, and I gave her final blessing before she passed away. And as I took my collar off after I was done giving her the blessing, and I just held her hand, and I said, "I know and you know that there was a lot of hurt." And at this point, my mother was a total quadriplegic. She couldn't move her hands or her arms or her legs. She could blink. That was pretty much it. She couldn't speak. And I just said, "You know that there was a lot of hurt. And I know that you can't say it, but it's more important that I say it, and that is that I love you and I forgive you." And that, I think, I hope um, was a moment for her where she could feel that relief. I know that it was for me. That forgiveness is not so much about forgiving the other person. It's about you letting go of that rock that you've been carrying around. And so it was tough. And I think the biggest difficulty in mine and my mother's relationship, mine and my father, of course, it was drugs, and him not being physically there, because he was either taking himself out of the situation because he was going into rehab, or he was taking himself out of the situation because he was making bad choices. So that was a major issue. But with my mother, I think one of the big things that happened is, when I was 18, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
No.
Yeah, and so I've had MS since 2006, and I thought that was going to be the thing that really brought me and my mother together. And it became such a wedge in between us, because my mother going through it herself, and having been going through it, when I would try to come to her for some sort of empathy, like I was having a bad day, my eyes weren't functioning the way I wanted to. I couldn't walk the way that I wanted to. And she would say, "Oh, you think that's bad?" And then the litany would come out, and that was so difficult, because like I was like, "You're my mother. You were supposed to be not just my mom, but now we're even closer, because this is something that we're going through together." And so that was a really, really tough thing. But again, at the end of both of my parents' lives, I was able to kind of come to that sense of peace with both of them, which I'm grateful for. I feel like a lot of people, they don't, because you know that that sense to be stubborn, or that sense to kind of hold your ground. That's as much as you want to be right, you still have to wake up with yourself at the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, and say, did I end that right, and do I feel good about that? And I do. I feel good about the how things ended, and I'm grateful for the way that they happened, because otherwise I wouldn't be the guy that I am today, and I wouldn't understand uh, the concept of grace the way that I understand it now, and I wouldn't understand the concept of caring the way that I understand it now if it weren't for the hard stuff that I had to go through. And I wouldn't appreciate all of the gifts that I've been given as a performer and the people that I've gotten to perform with. And again, this kind of transition into comedy from a singer, and again, MS ended my opera career because it affected my ability to memorize. And so I couldn't memorize 3 different opera scores in 2 different languages at the same time any longer. That was a skill that I just didn't have anymore, just due to the fact that I have lesions on the part of my brain that stop that are make it difficult for me to quickly memorize. So I had to figure out what was it that I was going to do, and so I started to do more of these multifaceted music shows where I'm not just singing classical music. I'm singing crossover music. You know, I sang top 40. I sang Sinatra. I sang pop music. I sang rock and roll. I sang jazz. And I still sing classical as well. And I do all of.
Do you like Neil Sedaka?
Oh my gosh, such great singing, and again, such great stories too. And that's the thing that I love about like Neil Sedaka. What I love about Tom Jones, Engelbert Humperdinck, um, Paul Anka, that their music, it wasn't just a verse long enough that could get you to the hook. You know, that their songs, they told such beautiful stories. And again, that's like when I realized when I had gotten sick, I was like, that's what I love about music, is these amazing stories that live within the notes. You know, so many people, and I always say that's the difference between a good singer and a great singer. A good singer, you're going to say, oh my God, did you hear that note that they sang? Or, oh my gosh, wasn't that beautiful? A great singer is the one who says, oh my God, I had tears in my eyes because I could feel what they were singing. I could feel it. And I feel that's the same thing with a good comedian. You know, it's someone who is so relatable that you get it, and that you can barely see that they're being vulnerable because there's such an authenticity to it.
Wow.
You know, even in a character, you know, that there's authenticity to it. You know, I loved the documentary on Gilbert Gottfried. You know, it was called Gilbert, and it was so brilliant to get to understand Gilbert the man and how much of that was in the character, but how seldom we saw the man, because
Exactly.
because the character was such a suit of armor,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that it kept him safe and comfortable. There's moments they were talking about his sister, who's a wonderful artist in her own right, and she had a video camera. They had gotten a video camera, and there's an amazing little clip that they talk about where you see Gilbert totally just normal until he realizes that he's on camera, and then the eyes scrunch up, and he just goes into that suit of armor. It's like, my goodness, you could just see like there was so much that he was working through his performing, you know. And it was just but I loved Gilbert Gottfried. Just so funny. But that's something that I kind of learned, that through telling my stories the way that I did them, um, that I was working through my stuff as well. You know, I was mourning the loss of my opera career, even though I was still singing and still getting to work with orchestras and vocal groups, and I was doing cabaret shows in New York, and I was still touring in Europe. I was, you know, in Prague and Salzburg, and performing beautiful music. I was still mourning this loss, and that was tough. That was really difficult. But then, um, again, as I'm performing full time, this little thing happened. I don't know if you heard about it. It was a global pandemic. So we all went through COVID, and again, you know, and that was terrifying, because this is all that I do, is I perform full time. And so I was like, what am I going to do? And so a friend of mine named Jason Pollock, he and
Oh
I.
yeah. Oh yeah, sure. Sure. Just the guy that I found hot my whole life. Whatever. Whatever.
So Jason reached out to me and said, hey, let's start a podcast.
Yeah, of course.
And so that's what everyone was doing at that time, and it was insane. It was insane. And of course, working in the kind of like New Jersey scene, that's like the road to New York City through Philadelphia. So he had a small club in South Jersey that he
What's
was
the
booking.
address?
So he had met a ton of people through his time, booking clubs and doing stand up himself. And so we had all these great people, and one of the people that we had on the show was a comedian, Mark Riccadonna.
Shut
And,
up. Mark
and
Riccadonna loves me.
so I'll give him after we get off. I'll give him a call. I'll let him know that we chatted. But
I would like. I want him. I hope he has an older brother for me. I like. Doesn't Linda Riccadonna sound fabulous?
I say, Ronnie, if you're watching, hey, I'm just saying, you got a shot, okay? But Mark was the sweetest, and he got my number from Jason. He called me, and he says, Justin, your story is amazing, because we were talking about, of course, just like now, just talking about our backgrounds. And he goes, your story is amazing. You are just so authentic. You are so funny. How long have you been doing comedy? I said, oh, Mark, I don't do comedy. I just, in my music shows, I just do banter in between the songs. He goes, yeah, the stuff in between the songs? That's comedy. How long have you been doing it? So I'm like, oh, well, so I guess I've been doing it for about 5 years now, 6 years. He said, I want to work with you. I want to do shows with you. I want to perform with you. I want to just kind of, once things open up, I want to start doing things with you. I want to just start performing. Save my number. And he hangs up. And, we get a lot of lip service in this industry. People tell you, oh my God, you're great. I've got to have you at my club. And then for the rest of the only sound that comes from their direction is crickets. That's business. That's just what it is. It's not called show fun, people. It's called show business. And that's it. Unless you've got it written down, you never count your chickens till they're hatched. That's it. And then things started to open up again, and Mark gave me a call. He said, hey, I want us to try something. So we started to do a couple of shows together, and now we do a bunch of stuff. Me and him are going to be out in Ohio in March, doing a couple of shows out there. And I've met his family, and it's just he's become such a brother, and that's, again, it's just this kind of road that all kind of started. I didn't even actually mention who really started, and that was Chris Rich, amazing comic from the Philly area. She's the one who kind of brought me into hanging out with Stanley and Julia Scotti, and then Julia put me and Jason together. Jason put me and Mark together, and now here I am. I find myself now getting booked to host and feature and do these comedy shows. And
is Jason single? Let's get to the real meat of this discussion.
I hate to break your heart, his wife Laura. She's such a sweetheart, but I'm not saying that they might not be up for a third. That's all I'm gonna say. But
all right, I'll get off the Jason Pollock.
Hey, I'll let him know that he has such a fan in you. My goodness,
for decades.
Oh gosh, and he is a sweetheart. He is the funniest. Mark, actually, we were doing one of the podcasts, and he said, Jason, if you had a British accent, you'd be the most famous comedian on the planet. Because he does. Jason's kind of genesis and comedy all stems from BBC, Monty Python, and all those great sitcoms that were coming out when he was a kid from the BBC. And so he was just like, oh, that is, if you listen to Jason's comedy, you can totally see his timing. All that comes from a very English sense of humor, and it's
I've never heard a thing he says.
You're too busy salivating.
What did you say? Go ahead.
No, but he's such a sweetheart, and Jason and I, we still do shows together that we co-host shows, and me, Mark, and Jason do shows together. We do this thing called Ready Set Joke. It's not our idea, but it's essentially it's stand-up comedy improv where the comedians get up on stage, and while the audience is seeing what we're going to be talking about, we're seeing what we're going to be talking about. So you walk up on stage and you have to riff for 5 minutes on 4 topics that you're being given on a screen that you haven't seen before. It's stand-up comedy on a tightrope. It's amazing. And
It's like the set list.
yes, exactly. Exactly. I was going to say it's definitely not our original idea, but it's so
But you
fun
come
to
up
do
with
it.
new material that way.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's so funny because sometimes the thing that you riff on, you realize, you know what? This thing, I've got bones. I just need to find the meat, you know? and you never realize, that stupid little thing, it's like, hey, that's at least 2 minutes. That's a new 2 minutes.
Nothing better
But
than trying it out in front of an audience.
oh gosh, yeah, 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 yeah. And I've realized that I'm not a traditional writer. Like I don't sit down for hours. I don't write out word for word. Okay, where's the pause going to be? This and that. I I keep notes. I keep notes of ideas and thoughts that I have. Um, and once I kind of have the idea of how it works, I'm like, oh, this is the chunk. This is the chunk. And I have them kind of set up. I have a whole thing on my phone that's my notepad of, okay, these are the chunks that work. These are the ones that I can go to. This is 5 minutes. This is 10 minutes. I can make it 5 minutes if I have to. And then I have a whole bunch of stuff that's just ideas. I'm like, oh, these haven't fermented yet. Like there's like this is like 30 seconds, but it's if I ever am in a situation where I can just do a bunch of tossaways, like I can maybe I'll do that where I have, 3 minutes of like, this really isn't like a joke. It's just 30 seconds. So here's a bunch of 30-second ideas that I have.
And the nice thing is when you throw out in front of an audience, you throw out a 30-second idea and it gets a laugh just at the premise, then you got gold and you can start riffing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And there's nothing like an audience that's there to have a good time.
That's it.
I'll tell you. That's one of my, and it's so funny. I'm from Philadelphia. I don't do a lot of performing in Philadelphia. And I think that there's two main reasons for that. One is because the scene is just really, really tough. And unless you have the financial backing, it's just tough to get into it. At least that's what I've realized trying to perform musically at a certain level in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But also having been in a Philadelphia audience, I'm like, holy moly, my gosh, why everyone's just sitting back like, oh, no, go ahead, entertain me. Sure, no, go ahead, Jester, go do it. No, go ahead, try to make me laugh. I dare you. I'm like, come on, you paid all this money. Why not just, I don't know, have a good time. Have a good time.
I hate I hate that kind of audience where they're sitting there to judge and break it down.
Right. And you're just fighting uphill the whole time. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I was under the impression that you were attempting to feel joy. And it's just I've loved that about hang on a second. Oh, I'm so sorry. I've got something else coming through on my phone.
Okay. It gives me a chance to ding around here too.
Here we go. Okay, I'm back. But I love audiences that I work a lot of theaters, and so when you work a comedy show in a theater, they are usually theater people that have a subscription, and so they are there to have a good time, and I adore that because it's like, wow, these people, they already have given you that opportunity of grace of like, hey, we're all here to laugh. So I am so excited to see what you're going to do. And I think that's also the majority of the time what the audience is, which is I think it's such a beautiful thing is that everyone is just rooting for you. That's kind of how I deal with any sort of stage nerves. And I've been doing this for 22 years and performing for audiences. And it's amazing to think, I haven't been tying my shoes right for 22 years, but I've been doing this. It's crazy. So, but I love the fact that you perform for a group. The majority of them, they're with you. There's going to be those people. There's going to be those no entertain me people, but they are in such the minority. And so I love when you go into a space, you just have a good time. You don't work for the laugh, or you don't work for the applause. You just work to have a good time for yourself. And when you're that authentic with having a good time, the audience sees that and they're with you to have the good time with you. And so I've loved that I've been able to bring that to
He left us. He'll be back. We'll just hold on for a second. Isn't he interesting? He's got so much talent in his left finger, left pinky, in his pinky. He's got more talent in his pinky than most people have in their entire body. We'll just wait and see if he gets back on. I think he went to like tap his phone for somebody. There he is. And then he tapped the wrong button. Here we go. I see birds above. Where is Justin? This Justin. There's Justin.
oh my gosh. I am so sorry. Okay, so I'll tell you all real quick. Uh I have an 11-year-old daughter. And so she's coming home from school. She always calls me, "Hey dad, I'm walking home from school. I'll be home in 15 minutes." And that was her calling. And of course, I go to hit the one button, I hit the other button because buttons. That's
I've
why.
never made a mistake in my 73 years. Never.
Oh, hang on. I can't hear you, Linda. I don't know what happened. Wait a second. Are you on mute? Am I on mute?
No, I
Oh
don't
gosh,
know.
hang on. Let me make sure I've got my volume up. Oh golly. Oh, I'm here. There we go. I think I'm back. Hang on. I see what happened. I got unplugged. I apologize.
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm 73 next month and I've never made one mistake. So I don't get it, but whatever. Go ahead with your bad self.
Oh my gosh. And God bless you. My goodness, 73. So how long have you been doing comedy?
10 years.
Oh my gosh. So do you love it, hate it? What's your feelings?
I'm all about being on stage, and everything I do so I can do comedy for the military and veterans.
Oh, I love
So
it.
my passion is to make them laugh and heal. And lately, since the pandemic, everybody needs to laugh. It's job security. And so, yeah, been having fun. But really, I've been making people laugh since I could talk.
Oh, that's great. I think that's a lot of comedians things is that you kind of realize, like there's that moment where you say something in a place and the room laughs and you're like, "Oh, yeah, I need to feel that again. I need to
Yeah.
feel that again." And it's the best drug. It really is. There's nothing better.
People say, "Aren't you afraid to get on stage? You're so brave." Yeah, I'm like a first responder. I'm like a policeman, fireman. Yeah, right up there. Get real.
It's
You
so
know, when you have a passion, like I know what the military's going through. And I know, like you were speaking about your dad, the rough life that he had because of the military. I know the issues, and I know that comedy can help them. And after I do a show for the military, I invite them to come back and tell a story that chases away their friends and relatives. Like, want to see my scar? Doesn't work. You want
right.
a joke? Come see me. And when you have a passion you're so cemented into your passion, you have no fear.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true. It is. And it's funny because people always they tell me, when they hear about the places that I've sung, they're like, "Oh my God, isn't that terrifying?" And I said, "No." And I go back to that idea of also the majority, 95% of the people that are there want you to be good. You know, no
Thank
one,
you.
no one spends that money and that time out of their lives to go see someone be bad or sit in that belief that this is going to be terrible. And so 95%. So like when I say like, yeah, the time that I sang on ESPN for millions of people, yeah, that wasn't scary to me
Will you
because
do me a favor?
yeah,
I know your daughter's coming home and we've been on quite a while. Will you turn around and play something and sing?
sure.
Are you
So
allowed to, or do you have to kill me?
no. But you will hear from my agent. No, I'm joking. So, so let's see what we have going on. Now, this is my. So this is called a mini piano. They made these back in the 1920s to actually go into apartments. So this isn't a full 88 keys. It's only I think 66. But it's an
Well, forget it then.
but she's also 100 years old, so she's a little honky tonk. But we love her. So here's something that I think is kind of from her era. So we'll start with that. So fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on a Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, darling, kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true.
The audio just left
No.
at the end, just at the end. That was beautiful. Beautiful.
Oh,
I
thank
had to
you.
put it on mute so I could sing along.
And I'll give you a little taste of something else just to prove, because I talked about it plenty enough. I am an opera singer, so.
Wow. That's
Thank you.
beautiful.
And I do a great set on wiener jokes too. So it's
Thank you so much.
oh,
Wow, what a talent you are.
oh, thank you for having me.
Yes. Tell everybody what day you and where you're doing the Good Karma performance. And please tell everybody your socials and any upcoming shows they can get to.
Absolutely. So so the Good Karma Comedy Festival, I'm on that comedy festival because I won their joke contest. So yeah, my punchline. So it was kind of like a Mad Lib style. He set it up with the punchline. He goes, eye infection again. I never should have used the blank eyeliner. And so my punchline was, I never should have used the eyeliner from my Epstein Island gift bag. So, so so that's so I'm so glad I'm going to be on the ninth. I want to say, oh my gosh, it is the 20 22nd or the 23rd, I'm going to be on the show at the Church of Satire with John Fugelsang. So John Fugelsang is
What?
going to be the headliner that night.
Oh, give
So,
me a break.
so excited to do that. If you want to know more about what I'm doing, I am on Facebook, Instagram, and also my website, justingonzaleztenor.com. So that's Gonzalez, Gonzalez. And yeah, Justin Gonzalez Tenor. If you go on Instagram, Facebook, you'll be able to find me. And the next show I have is actually in 2 weeks. I'm going to be at the beautiful Mock Chunk Opera House in Jim Thorpe, PA. I'm going to be doing a little rock and roll for you. I'm also the lead singer of a group called 33 and a Third Lives Killer Queen Experience. I'm their Freddie Mercury. So we'll be doing a little bit of Queen up there. And so that's the first weekend of February. So hey, pop on up. We'd love to see you. And again, I've been Justin Gonzalez.
Thank you so very much. I love you lots. I can't wait to
Oh.
see you perform live.
Yes, let's do that soon, Linda. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Bye, Justin. Thank you so much.